Hello and welcome back to another Demis Hellen tutorial. I thought it would be a really good idea to look at Union from Soundspot. It has just been released today and I've just been having a little bit of a mess around with it, and it is pretty damn good for trance bass lines and pads. Really good, and I'm experimenting with plucks and things at the moment, so I thought I'd just give you a quick guided tour really as to what this offers. And right at this very moment of this video being made, it is $5.99. It's an absolute bargain. How can you complain for £6? Don't know how long that's going to last, but if you head over there, I'm not being paid or endorsed or anything like that by this company. This is just purely my own view, and yeah, it is definitely worth the money before the price goes up to its full price. Right, so the first things that I kind of attempted was a Supersaw and some trance bass lines and then a pad. So let's take a look at the two bass patches I've already made. The first one is this one here. So it sounds really good, and it is a mixture of 3 oscillators. You have 2 generators here, and then you have a wavetable generator here, and this is generated based on the settings from these two, so oscillators A and B, 1 and 2, and any effects that you use here. So all these effects that you apply to these 2 oscillators will be shown as a kind of combined waveform from both to create a new wavetable. And if we just listen to this wavetable on its own, this is what's been created, and it's a combination of these two in the settings that I've used with the distortion, because I haven't turned any of the other bits on. Let's just turn all these back on. So first things first, we have 2 oscillators, and they have a general octave, semitones and fine tuning, and then coarse. As you can see here, both same on each side. We have unison, and amazingly you have up to 32 voices of unison, which is absolutely insane, but watch out for your CPU, and that's why I've kind of kept these quite nice on the CPU, because these are going to be given away for free in the link below. And then you have your wavetable selection, so sine, square, saw, triangle, noise, organ and metallic, and that is the same for both on each side. And then the final wavetable here doesn't have any sort of wavetable selection because it's a generation of these two to create this one, but you do have your octave, semitone, fine tuning, coarse and your unison voices down here. So if we want to go into a little bit more depth, we click the magnifying glass here, and this is just applying to oscillator 1, and you can set your ADSR settings here. As you can see, it's quite a plucky bass, and then your mod settings here for when you apply cutoff, and as you can see here, we've got some mod settings. And then we have the LFO as well, which is constantly moving away, but there is actually nothing assigned to this particular LFO, but we can have a look at that in the future about applying it for different reasons. So once you've got the mod on, if you turn the cutoff down as an example, then you can click here and it shows us purple. So let's just do it on the detune here. So it shows us purple, and it shows that modulation is being applied by this envelope shape. If we click again, it turns blue, and that means we're getting the information from the LFO instead. And then if we click again, it's off. So it's quite intuitive how that works. I do like that. And then this little, like, what I call headphones. They're not headphones. This controls how much of the mod envelope is applied to that cutoff or whatever you might attach it to. So as you might see here, we have a phase option, detune. So even though we've applied 32 voices of unison as a maximum, for example, you can then detune those voices to an extortionate rate, and it makes some saws sound absolutely amazing, and we'll look at that in a bit. Blend is the same. It's just blending the unison voices with the original frequency, the input. Then we've got mid and side, so we can set it to more mono, or we can set it a bit more stereo. Really, it's just increasing the side detail and the mid detail, depending on which way you turn. It's bipolar, that one. Then we have pan, and then we have our output level. And all of them can be controlled by either the ADSR mod section or the LFO. And on the LFO here, you do have your timings on there. So there's no free LFO on that particular option. And that's what you get inside each oscillator. So if we click here, we've got the same again. You can see that I'm modding the cutoff with the mod ADSR here. And then set the mid side a little bit off, and the detune's a little bit heavier on that one. So that is the 2 oscillators, and then these 2 oscillators go through 4 effects in the middle, which you can choose to have on or off. And as far as I'm aware, you can't change the order of these, but you can access them once activated. So we've got distortion on, and we have some of the classic algorithms from Soundspot's other plugins here, which I'm not too familiar with a lot of them. I do have Evade, and the other one, it's a distortion unit saturator. So this is quite handy to have because you get them all down here as well. And you can choose between these different sections here. So we'll have a look at these in more detail in the future, but it's just to show you that you can add some control over your sound. So we've just got some digital distortion on here, a bit of a high pass up to 30 Hertz, and then using the low pass to shape where we want the kind of distortion to be heard the most, and then mix and drive. So we do have a phaser, a delay, and a reverb, and they all look the same. If you look at that, same, and then just different parameters to change. But we don't want reverb on this. Okay, so then once you do that, you hit generate wavetable, and it generates a wavetable based on the settings from both, and including the distortion that we've applied there, and anything else you might apply. And then when you click in here, you have the same things, just a couple of differences. So we still have the ADSR, the mod ADSR, the LFO, which can be controlled again here. And then we have wavetable. Now this is linked at the moment, so you can scan through and it'll choose the wavetable, very similar to Serum, and it'll choose the wavetable position here in the steps. So I can demonstrate that here. It'll choose different areas. So I've chosen the last step of the wavetable. You can unlink these so you can have them independently, and that can give you a little bit of stereo panning, give you a bit more width in the sound you're creating. And also these can be modulated also. So if you was to click here, you can see you can modulate, and you can control how much modulation happens on that particular sound. So that's great for creating some movement. As you can see there, the LFO is now controlling that, and it's just spanning the whole thing. Okay, so that is everything there, and same controls down at the bottom here for that. You just can't choose a source sound because it's generated from these 2. Then you have your mixer here, so oscillators 1, 2, and 3. So the blend options, very sensitive, so don't go too crazy with it, because if you just turn it down a smidge, it seems to go really quiet. And you've got your output gain and your pitch bend here. And then we have a little tab here for effects LFO, and this is the LFO that's applied to the effects units down below. So I've not messed around with this yet. I've not found a use. Probably could do some side chaining with that, and maybe some panning of certain areas. But as you can see here, we've loaded delay, dynamics, and that is everything. So if you wanted your delay to come after, you can rearrange them here, and you can set the delay to become like before your compression or before, and that's where I want it on there. And we haven't got anything else set, so let's click delay. So on delay, we have it set to 1/8 on both channels. I've set it to normal instead of cross, which is like ping pong. And again, we have these same controls. Now we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. That relates to the effects LFOs there. So you can shape them as an envelope and set them to trigger just like an envelope would instead of it being an LFO. And you've got usual controls there for delay. If we just go back to the LFO, just want to confirm this. Yeah, so you can set it here as a LFO, so you could have, let's say, this up here, that down there, just double click to get rid of a node, and you can add unlimited nodes on here as far as I'm aware. Create a nice little pluck envelope there, and then we can set it to trigger mode here, which then will give it the effect of an envelope, and it'll start every time that starts. Okay, so that's delay, and then dynamics here, you can see I've got a compressor, and I've set the threshold ratio and attack here, and then the gain and the mix, so you can do a bit of parallel compression, really nice to have. And then again, you can set your LFOs here to all the parameters, and that's the same for everything. So like if you hit the EQ, you've got an EQ, and you've got band 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. And again, you can modulate these, so that's all quite good and interactive. Let's just turn that off. And that really covers what Unison has to offer. It's pretty powerful. You've got your voice section up here, And then obviously you can load your presets here, like factory presets, and you get quite a few here that sound quite good. But we're developing our own. So that is the first trance bass, which sounds like that. That's oscillator 1 on its own, oscillator 2 on its own, and then oscillator 3 as the combined on its own. Now, I just want to cover that we do have on the outputs a EQ and a saturator and a side chainer. So the side chainer is not adding any sort of tonal value, but the saturator and the EQ are. So they're the two settings that I've used, and what we'll do is we'll bypass these and have a listen. So the output just from Unison is really good. It sounds really, really good, and it's more than usable just straight out the box with processing these effects in-house. But I've chosen to saturate it with this. Sounds really nice. And then just a bit of EQ to give it a bit of presence in the mix. Sounds really good. So that is the first preset, and that's called Trance 01. And what we have on the second bass was the patch essentially copied, and then I've just gone and tweaked it from there. So we've got a different wavetable here, and we've used 2 unison on that one and 6 on that one. So it's all a little bit different, and this is the one an octave up. It's a lot higher in the octaves anyway. Okay, so first things first, all I've got is a sidechain and a Pro Q3, so I'm just going to turn the Pro Q3 off. So that's what it sounds like. And you can see I've got 12 unison here on the generated wavetable, and we're using EQ, delay and dynamics. So let's just have a quick listen. We're not even listening to oscillator 2 here, because I wanted the sound to sound a little bit thinner, and that is the first oscillator, and then that is the generated wavetable, which sounds pretty good. I like that sound. So again, it's just going through the distortion here, and then we've used some EQ just to give it a bit of presence. We've boosted, reduced the highs, and then we've boosted some of the mids here, and I've just reduced the bass. So that's all I've done with that. Then a bit of delay to give it a little bit of movement in the track, and then some dynamics, so just use some basic compression. And you can see the compressors working there, just to do a bit of reduction to keep things under control. Let's just check we haven't used anything else. No, we haven't. And that sounds really well as well on its own. Really like that one. And then coupled with the other bass we've just been working on. And then if we put Pro Q3 back on, I'll show you the shape that I've done on there. Done some drastic boosting here. There, and you can see I've reduced the volume to maintain a -6-ish output there, and it's now just gone to 5.2, so it just needs a little bit of tweaking. I'll just do that now whilst I'm here. That should cover it, as long as it's somewhere in and around the -6 area. And that is the second sound. Now I've been messing around with pads, which is this one here. I haven't got a keyboard to hand just now, so let's just jump into the piano roll. That's the synth pad that I've created using Unison. Now there's a lot of movement in that pad, so let's just quickly show you what I've done to demonstrate some more of these features. So we've got 3 wavetables, and you can see I'm using the LFO to modulate oscillator 3 here. So let's have a look at the LFO settings. So I've set it to 2 on here, so it's fairly slow moving, and I've reduced the peak of the midsection of the LFO, so it has a nice slow kind of movement through there. It's more on the side presence, so I've increased the side detail, so it's a little bit wider in the stereo areas. And you can see it's moving quite slow and nice, it's giving you that modulation. And yeah, I think we've put copious amounts of reverb on there. I'm not too much of a fan of the reverb, but it does work when you get it just right. It does sound nice on the Supersaw, and it does sound nice on this pad. Dynamics, we've just got some basic control there with a full mix up, so there's no parallel compression happening. And that is everything on there. So what I was going to do is make a Supersaw for you now, just live on here, so we can just find another instance of Unison would help to demonstrate the capabilities of Union. Sorry, not Unison. Okay, so we have Union on screen, and we are going to mess around making a Supersaw, and we're going to use the Unison up to its maximum potential. So we're going to use 2 oscillators to start, so we are just going to have oscillators 1 and 2 active. But first, we'll let oscillator 1 do the work, and we'll show you how powerful the Unison is. So here we are with the original sound, just from oscillator 1, and we're going to scroll that up to 32 Unison. So we get a nice sound straight away. And we're just going to go in here and we're going to up the detune. Now that sounds just like a Supersaw on its own, just one oscillator. We've got that there. We'll do some mod shaping later, and we'll just... Okay, so just blend that in a little bit better. Right, so we'll put in the second one, doing the same settings, 32, it's on there. I'm going to turn the detune up just a little bit less. I'm going to drop the level slightly, and just increase the blend a little bit. Right, so we now have 32 Unison on each side, and I'm going to drop this 1 octave on this side just to separate it out a little bit. And we're going to drop this master gain a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we have a Supersaw, and we're going to boost it a little bit with some distortion. I'm going to use the 0 square, turn the mix up. Okay, and let's jump into the ADSR, and we'll just lengthen this out a bit. Just so it's not as fast on the cutoff. Give it a little bit more. Okay, so you're introducing so much harmonic detail using the 32 Unison, you're going to get some artifacts in your EQing stage. Like you can hear a bit of a resonant frequency, which you could describe as like a sine wave sort of sound whistling in the background. So that is something to be aware of when using 32, but this is just to demonstrate really. Okay, so we've created 2 things there. I'm not going to use the phase or anything like that. So we've got distortion and we've built up our sound. So we're going to generate the wavetable here. So we'll turn this on and generate. Okay, there we are. So let's listen to this on its own. Oh. So it's a little bit quiet. Let's turn this up. Okay, and we can choose the position of this. Well, we can do it from this screen. So something a bit smoother than a saw. That sounds good there. And again, 32 Unison. And this needs to go an octave down because I don't like it at that. Okay, let's add in a bit of power. Okay, and again, just a little bit on the ADSR. And then the wavetable position we don't need to mess around with. Right, so we'll increase the detune as well. And we'll have it more mono, just like it's just a fundamental frequency. All right, so we have... Sounds really good. So what should we do now? We could add some more distortion. Let's put some delay on. We'll have a bit of a cut. Okay, so we've got a bit of delay on there. And what we'll do is put some reverb on. So you'll see now what I mean by it's just a little bit iffy, in my opinion. Turn it down. It's okay there. That sounds good. And we're going to just put a little bit of compression on here as well. We'll just set some settings up here. We'll have a 3:1, but again increase, bit of slower release there. And let's give it a bit more presence with the EQ. If we go up here. And I'm just going to drop the bass. I'm going to do it from 30. Okay, so that sounded pretty good. Right, so that is something that I'd use indefinitely. Let's demonstrate now the mod ADSR. Now the issue with the mod ADSR is you can't attach it to all three oscillators at once, you have to do it for each one, which is a bit of a pain, but maybe that could come with a future update or something like that. Yeah, so you have to reduce this, so if we just turn these two off, and we'll drop this pluck onto it here. Now that's the bass, this pluck. Okay, so this is just one and we've cut it off here. And we're going to use the mod ADSR here. Reduce that distortion a bit, that could get annoying, but for the purpose of the demo it's fine. So the ADSR, it's already set to like a plucky sound. So we'll just leave it really where it was as an original setting. Okay, and the issue now is once you put this synth in, this one's not doing anything. So you do have to go in again. If we just leave it there, turn the cut off, activate. And then finally the same again for oscillator 3. So now we have a lovely kind of cutoff filter, but we have to automate all three because there's no macro controls or anything like that to automate all three at once. So it's a little bit of a pain in terms of automation, but the sound nonetheless is really good. So we have... Let's have that over 2 bars and we'll set the filters up. So Union, and we want to go to I've never looked for this on here, so just bear with me. Filters, oscillator 1, cutoff LFO range, cutoff connect, cutoff. There we are. So if we use that one, we need some sort of linking system so we can just control this in one go. So number 2, so it's about halfway down the page. Union again, about halfway down. And oscillator 3 cutoff. So now we have all 3 cutoffs here. Select them all. So we're automating that one indefinitely, and we haven't got these 2 on. That's why we're not hearing anything. There we are. As you can see, we've got the automation happening on the cutoff, and we've had to automate all 3 there. Now, the other thing is when it does filter in here, I think you're going to have to automate this as well, as it starts to kind of reverse on itself. So if we listen here, if I just lock these automation lanes so we don't get any messing around. As you can see, it's doing the opposite effect. Instead of it saying nice and sharp. So we'd have to automate this section as well on all oscillators. To get it nice and sharp again. So that is a potential downside to it, but it can be overcome. And if you just use it as a full blaring synth that you add into your lines, so you don't have to automate anything, then that would work well. Or use it as a pluck and not automate it, that's going to work really well. But where it best performs is pads and basses for me at the moment, indefinitely. Let's have a look at pads just as a last quick look. So that is the pad synth there. Let's just open this up. As you can see, 12 union, unison, 9 unison, and 3 on this one with some movement. And when you hold this down, so it sounds really well. It's just there's a few little hiccups here and there that I would like to see as some extra, like input knobs, so we can use them as macros and control all of that, and somehow avoid this weird thing where if we turn this cutoff down again, we see, there we are. So if we have the cutoff here, when we filter in, we don't want it to do this reversing thing. We'd have to go to here to stop it reversing. So there's means and ways around it, but it'd be nice to see a few of those things not do that, and have some macro knobs, even if they were just here or something to control. But overall, absolutely great sounding synth, and for $5.99 I don't understand why you haven't got it already. Let's have a look at the bass again before we log out. Here we go, and put the kick in there for you and the hats. So I've been messing around with the effects on the mixer channels, so things are sounding a little bit off balance, but the sounds are really good. So I'm going to give all 4 of those presets away. I've already made a Supersaw where I haven't messed around with the settings like you've just seen on screen, and you can have 2 basses, the pad, and also the Supersaw. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and drop me a comment and let me know what you think, and we can have a little bit of a discussion about the new synth and its capabilities. And finally, hit subscribe and hit the bell icon to click select all, and then you get to see all 3 uploads every week of trance related topics. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.